Hey, I'm back. What's going on here? Well, the lighting is spooky because this is a Halloween episode. Okay, I can see that, but why are there the sheets on all the things? Well, we put those there because we didn't want the stuff to get dusty while you were away, and you were gone for like 4 months. There's like even a sheet on this duck. That's not even a sheet, that's just a tissue. Look at these walls. You didn't have to put a sheet on these two. No. I mean, that's literally just paint. That's not a sheet. Walls don't get dusty. Okay, get this lighting out of here.
No, get those lights off!
Here, see, much nicer. Make good decisions next time. We don't need this stuff. We don't need that. You wouldn't even have had this intro without that. Wouldn't have even been a little bit funny. No. We don't need it. No. We don't need it. Nope, we don't. Okay, it's not needed here. Alright, we don't need it. Okay. This is a Halloween episode, but it's not Hey. This is a Halloween episode, but it's not a scary one. It's an anti-scare one. A non-fright. Not scare. Today is about clowns. Nowadays, I believe that clowning is viewed as really quite frightening, and I don't believe that it deserves that in the least. So, I've dressed up like a clown, and today I'm going to give you the history behind clowning and why it should really not be considered frightening. I got makeup, but then it was quite unfortunate, so I used acrylic paint, so it may crack and fall away, but you know, that's okay. I'm also using a different camera, which has worse audio, but better video, and it works with these lights, so. The history of clowns. Clowns in their earliest iteration were seen in ancient Egypt, and past that, as you're probably aware, ended up as court jesters later on. They were sort of important because they were the only ones that could make fun of the king without consequences, so these fools continued doing what they did for a while. Next up we see the Commedia dell'arte. That is the most American pronunciation I've ever had in my entire life. And that developed in Italy. The bottom line is people traveled around in these troupes with different archetypes. All of them really are very similar to the clowns that we know today. And they had masks. And the trouble was they went town to town and spoke to people that didn't speak their language. And they did all this physical humor in these gags. And it was sort of to some extent seen as mysterious or frightening or whatever. And this continued for a long time. It was popular and it still exists. And then past that we have Joseph Grimaldi, who is widely known as the father of modern clowning. An English fellow. People widely loved Joseph Grimaldi and what he did. He used a lot of physical comedy and dressed up like this. Joseph Grimaldi established this, and after a while these different personalities developed in clowning. You've got Whiteface, August, and a third one. Oh, and it's known as like the Happy Hobo, or something to that effect. Clowning survived for a while, and as we enter the 1900s, we see some people that became modern clowning celebrities. Of course, Charlie Chaplin acted in films, and was very good at using his body to be funny. And then, after people like Chaplin in films, we get people like Emmett Kelly Sr, who were so good at presenting themselves as these characters. And in the 80s and 90s, clowns succeeded. They thrived and took on even brighter colors than they had before. And a lot of clowns nowadays still take on these color schemes, which we'll get back to. And now we have clowns like Slava. Again, I've not a clue if my pronunciation is even half on. People like him, they take art and convey it through clowning. It's not the clowning for them that's the art, at least the way that I see it. It's that they convey art through clowning, and it's fantastic. With things like his snow show, we see these beautiful, beautiful sets and images and things presented through clowning. And so it's comedic and wonderful and fantastic and exactly what it needs to be. Now, if we step back a little bit, we see clowning enter film in the 80s and 90s with Stephen King's It and related things. And clowns started to be seen as frightening, as spooky or creepy. And Wayne Gacy, the murderer who on the side was a clown, certainly didn't help this. With these films and people, clowns took on a perception of fear and murder and something like that. And it's largely because clowns have exaggerated features and have sort of always been viewed as unknown or strange, as we saw with the Commedia dell'arte. Even since then, clowns have been developed in film and modern culture as frightening and like they eat people or something. So that's that. Here's the reason that they shouldn't be frightening. Allow me for a moment to metaphorically paint a picture on your head, in your head, on your brain. Since a child, you've loved clowning. You've learned this art of being so physically able, having such good control of your body that you can be very funny with it and moving properly to do these things that make people laugh. And you go through school, you spend time with people that love the same thing, and you grow at this, you get good at it. And then someone tells you that it's frightening, and the whole world agrees. I'm not saying that this is a reason that clowning shouldn't be frightening. It's unfair to expect the world just to not see clowning as frightening. Clowns like Slava and Emmett Kelly, they are so good at this. It's skill and lots of time that allows them to present themselves as this. They move and act skillfully, artfully, and it's beautiful, it's fantastic, it's a whole culture. I think largely where people get frightened of clowns is that they're kind of outdated. Like clowns like Joseph Grimaldi and Charlie Chaplin and even Emmett Kelly, as I've said, they are to some extent outdated too, but at the same time they feel more timeless. Clowns like this, they have the color schemes from the 80s and 90s that were really popular then and worked well, but nowadays are sort of viewed as obnoxious. So I think that clowning needs to be modernized, and I think it also has very little reason to be viewed as frightening, because it's artful and beautiful. And I believe this objectively, not subjectively. I do agree that some clowns sort of give a sense of disquiet. And as I said, that's that feeling of outdatedness, but still, it's trying to metaphorically force a metaphorical square peg larger than a metaphorical round hole into that round hole. These clowns don't fit in today's culture anymore, these sort of outdated ones. Clowning should not be a go-to for horror films or Halloween costumes. It's just become a stock character that guarantees someone to be frightened, and there's very little reason for it, at least the way that I see it. I forgot to say, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. In all seriousness, don't default to seeing a clown as frightening, because when Joseph Grimaldi was around, that's not what he was seen as. That's all that I have to say. Just think about how you think about clowns. Okay. Here are a few things that I forgot to mention when I filmed this video earlier this day. A pretty cool tidbit is that a lot of clowns have sort of, copyrighted their makeup by painting their face on a ceramic egg. And also another really cool clown that I forgot to mention was Marcel Marceau. And he has some cool stuff. I think I'm gonna leave some links in the description about some cool clowns to check out. And a lot went into this video, and I've been painting clown noses and painting on photographs of myself, and I tested out makeup. Lastly, I'd really like to use this clown character in some sort of short film at some point. One more serious and more artful, and then also I just want to do some sort of clowning routine, something directly, intentionally comedic, in the style of modern clowns. So that's kind of what I'm going for at this point. And I think that could turn out nicely.